recognize that you don't become the most powerful nation in history by accident. You don't become the wealthiest nation in history by accident. There's a cause for the effect. There's a formula that produces that kind of result. And if you change the formula, friends, you will get a different result. Many people today want to radically transform the formula of America. If they do that, we will get a different America. We will not have the success and the blessings that we've enjoyed up to this point. So we need to know, what is the formula? What is it that produces a successful nation? And how do we hold on to it, protect it, preserve it, and pass it to the next generation? The place to go for that is the guys that gave it to us. We got to say, what did they give us? What did they put in place that made this nation so successful? And right there in the heart of the Declaration of Independence that they gave us, they told us what the formula was. And George Mason warned us about this. He was one of the framers of the Constitution, one of the 55 that actually put it together, but not one of the 39 that signed. He refused to sign the Constitution because it didn't have the Bill of Rights. So he comes along later with Madison and pushes through the Bill of Rights. We call him the father of the Bill of Rights. But he said, no free government, nor the blessings of liberty can be preserved to any people, but by a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles. He said, you got to keep coming back over and over again to the foundation that made you successful in the first place. And that's what we need to do right now as Americans. I heard someone earlier talking about how we're almost groping in the dark right now, trying to figure out who we are, trying to figure out what direction the nation should go. Should we march down the road to socialism that Washington, D.C. is trying to take us to, or should we return to the principles of freedom that made us great in the first place? Well, Mason said, return to those principles over and over and over again, and that's how you'll protect that freedom. You'll find them right there in the heart of our birth certificate. Right there in the Declaration of Independence, there are 56 words that make up what I call the frame of America. It's the frame around your picture. It's the frame around what you love about being an American. And I don't know what picture you would choose to put up there, something that depicts maybe your family or your church or your community, your schools, whatever it is. Know this, put your picture up there. And if that frame goes, your picture's going with it. If that frame is lost, that's making all this possible, we lose all those freedoms, everything we hold dear about being an American. So we have got to protect that frame. That is our duty and our responsibility. But the first thing we got to do is know what that frame is. What are those principles that the Founding Fathers gave us? I'm going to ask for a little bit of help tonight. I brought one of my boys with me. Would y'all please welcome Trey Green to the stage? He's going to come share a few of these principles with us. Come on out, Trey. Okay, Trey's going to share with you the 56 words. How you doing, bud? Good, all right. It is a big screen. I think that's the biggest screen we've ever had. But anyway, he's going to share the first part of the Declaration. Go ahead and give them the first paragraph so they know why Jefferson said we got to tell the world about this. And then the 56 words, and then explain what those 4 principles are, and then I'll take it from there. Go.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another, and to assume when the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitles them. A decent respect for the opinion of mankind requires they should declare the causes that impelled them to separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Now, in the words of the Declaration of Independence, there are 4 basic principles that make up the frame of America. First, the Founding Fathers began with the basic idea that truth is real, it is obvious, and it does not change. Second, they made it clear that God is the source of freedom, meaning that our rights don't come from any elected or appointed officials. They come from God Almighty. Third, the just powers of government can only come from the consent of the governed. That's you and me. Now, the word consent is used 3 times in the Declaration and 11 times in the Constitution. Obviously, the Founding Fathers didn't want the government using their power without our consent. They want us to always remember the government's use of power without our consent is tyranny. Now, the last part of the frame is the pursuit of happiness. This is the free enterprise system that has made America the successful nation in history. Thomas Jefferson once said, "A wise and frugal government which shall leave men free to regulate their own pursuit of industry and improvement, and shall not take from the mouth of labor bread it has earned, this is the sign of good government." Now, get ready for a rapid-fire course covering these 4 principles: truth, Creator, consent, and pursuit of happiness. Please welcome back my dad, Rick Green.
All right, just another one of those shy, poorly socialized homeschoolers for you. So, all right, we're going to fly through these as quick as we can. I had to lose the jacket. second. We'll see how long the tie lasts. But let's start first with truth. There is a truth war going on in America. It's a battle between those that believe that there are moral absolutes. There's a concept of right and wrong. It's always right to do right. It's always wrong to do wrong. And then those that say moral relativism for all. Might be wrong for me, doesn't mean it's wrong for you. Everybody do whatever feels good in their own eyes, whatever feels right to them. This battle is raging right now. It was raging in the age of the Founding Fathers as well, but the Founding Fathers came down on the side of right and wrong. The French Revolution was all about moral relativism. You do what feels good, everybody do what feels good, and it led to total chaos. These guys said right and wrong, moral absolutes. Doesn't mean they got it right every time, but they believed in the concept of right and wrong, and that's why Washington said, of all the habits and dispositions which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In other words, of all the pieces of the formula, of all the parts of that formula that's going to make you successful, religion and morality are indispensable. You cannot do without them. You must have them if you're going to be successful as a nation. No question about it. Those are truths, moral absolutes, and we got to get back to them. That's a very fundamental part of the frame that we've been moving away from for too long. Now, the second major part of the frame is consent of the governed. That's the idea that our elected officials can only do what we want them to. Their power, their rights as elected officials, as representatives, come from us. So it's our responsibility to stand up and say, I give you consent or I refuse consent. That's our job. That's the duty as a citizen. The system works, but we have to work the system. In fact, James Garfield, the President of the United States, he warned us about this. He said, now more than ever before, the people are responsible for the character of their Congress. He said, if that body be ignorant, I don't know what you're laughing. He said if that, I'm trying to do a presentation here. He said if that body be ignorant, reckless, and corrupt. Now get this, it's because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. It's not just Republican just Democrats. It's Republican, Democrat. It's anybody that we put in office that does not adhere to the principles that made the nation great. That is willing to say the end justifies the means. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get what I want. To use government to take from one to give to another. To use government to do the things that our churches and our communities and us as individuals should be doing. So it's our job. Now, he goes on to say, if it be intelligent, brave, and pure, which is what we all want in all of our elected officials, right? It's because the people demand, not ask for it, demand these high qualities to represent them in the national legislature. If the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise, the culture, and the morality of the nation do not aid in controlling the political forces. Bottom line, friends, it's not enough to scream at your TV. It's not enough to complain around the dinner table. We have to get engaged in this process and say, the buck stops with me. We, the people, are the ones that must stand up and make sure that our system glorifies God and make sure that our system reflects those values upon which the nation was built. That's consent of the governed. That's what makes the system work, and we've got to get back into engaging in that part of the Declaration of Independence. Now, the third part of the Declaration, this is where the most, controversy comes from, is the question of whether or not God should be in the equation. I would submit to you tonight that the Founding Fathers said God should not only be in the equation, that God is at the center of the equation. That what makes our system special is the fact that our freedom comes from God, not government. That our freedom comes from God, not our neighbors. You see, we could try another way of doing this. I mean, those that don't want God in the equation, say there is no God or whatever, we could get together and start our own little commune right here. Put on our tie-dye shirts, stand around the trees, hold hands, sing Kumbaya. Look at each other and say, I love you, and you love me, and I confer freedom upon you, and you confer freedom upon me, and we'll live happily ever after, right? Now, there's this thing called the depravity of man, and one group among us will become stronger eventually than the rest of us, and they'll begin to take away our freedom. What can we do? Not much. If your neighbor gives you your freedom, your neighbor can take it away. If government gives you your freedom, government can take it away. What the founders gave us is a system that says we have equal protection for all because it comes from a higher source. If you take God out of the equation of freedom, you have no true freedom. Your freedom is totally up to the whims of whoever happens to be in power or happens to be the majority at the time. You got to keep God in the equation if you want that freedom to survive. And that's why this debate over whether or not we are in fact one nation under God is huge. It's really the crux. This is where what everything comes down to in terms of what our system is going to look like. And that's why it's such a sometimes vehement opposition on this issue. Whenever you start talking about having God in the equation, and people get almost violent about not wanting God in the equation. But what a lot of times they'll do on the intellectual side of things is they'll say, wait, the Founding Fathers didn't want God in the equation. The Founding Fathers, these guys are all atheists and agnostics and demons. We had an unchristian beginning in America. We teach out of textbooks like the Godless Constitution. The president stood in a Muslim country and announced to the world, America is not a Judeo-Christian nation. We use this textbook on law school campuses and colleges all over the country where we say what makes America great is our godlessness. Really? Is that so? And the longer they're on campus, the more this indoctrination they're going to get. And you know, you might say, yeah, but my kid's going to go to a Christian university. They're not going to be influenced by that. Listen, friends, every student on every campus in America that is taught this worldview, they're going to impact your life. They're going to impact my life because they're going to go into the polling place. They're going to vote for people that share a worldview that says, keep God out of the equation of freedom. They're going to serve, they're going to run for the legislature or run for Congress or sit on the bench and hand down decisions reflecting that worldview. There is no question about it. Lincoln was right. The philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will be the philosophy of government in the next. So what we teach on campus today is going to be what our government looks like in 15, 20 years. So the longer they're there, the more that they're going to get. I went to a little school out in West Texas called Angelo State, and after that I went to law school at the University of Texas. Have I mentioned hook 'em horns yet tonight? We need to do that at least every 15 minutes. We're going to close with the eyes of Texas. That is okay, right, Tim? We can do that. No, okay, seriously. After law school, I went back to visit at Angelo, and this buddy of mine is still going to school there. So I asked his parents, I said, hey, what do you think he's going to be when he gets out of college? The dad thought about it for a minute, scratched his head. He said, you know, I don't know, 65, 66, you know, somewhere around there. Yeah, not really what I was asking, but you get the point. I mean, some of them are there a long time, and the longer they're there, the more that they're going to get. It is impacting our culture. You look at some of the decisions being handed down by the courts today, it's because of that worldview creeping into our government. In this case, for instance, out of Pennsylvania, dealt with a murder trial. This guy had actually taken an axe handle, beat to death an elderly woman for her Social Security check. The jury convicted him of murder. They sentenced him to death. It gets appealed to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania Supreme Court said, you know what? Terrible crime. Problem is that prosecutor in the courtroom had the nerve to mention 7 words out of the Bible. We're going to have to vacate this thing. You guys start over simply because he mentioned a few words out of the Bible. I'm embarrassed to say this case comes from my home state of Texas, right outside of Houston, a little school district called Santa Fe. It dealt with prayer at a graduation. Now, the question was not if one of you pastors could come in and pray. The question was not if I as a speaker could come in and pray. The question was, can a student, one of the graduating students at their own graduation, elected by their classmates, can they get up and pray? Federal judge said, you bet. This court will allow prayer if it's a typical non-denominational prayer. The prayer can refer to God the Almighty, but the prayer must not refer to Jesus. Make no mistake, this court will have a United States Marshal in attendance at the graduation, and if any student offends this court by mentioning Jesus in a prayer, that student will be summarily arrested and face 6 months incarceration. What was the crime? Mentioning the name of Christ at a public school graduation. Just 3 years ago over in Nevada, a young lady gets up to give her valedictorian address. She's about to mention her faith in Jesus Christ as part of her success. They turn the microphone off, will not allow her to utter the words, Jesus Christ. Same year, graduation in Colorado, a young lady gets up to give her valedictorian address. I don't know why it's always the ladies that are the valedictorians, but pretty sure it's because they're smarter than us. That's the right answer. Is this your wife you're sitting with? Then you should say, because you're smarter than me. There you go. All right. See, I gave you a great opportunity for some good points. Anyway, it's because they're smarter, no doubt. So this girl gets up in Colorado. She's going to give her valedictorian address. She mentions her faith in Jesus Christ. They require a public apology before they'll hand her diploma to her. Why? Because she mentioned Jesus Christ's name? I mean, friends, come on. You go back to the Founding Fathers and John Adams himself. He said the general principles upon which the founders achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity. We're founded on Christian principles, but yet you fast forward 230 years later, you can't even mention his name at a public school graduation. Something has happened in our culture. We have lost our history. We don't know what these guys actually said or did. We don't know who they were, let alone what they really believed. We maybe can name 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of the Founding Fathers. If you've been watching Glenn Beck on Fridays with my boss David Barton, I bet you can name 10 or 12 by now. But 250 guys are our Founding Fathers, yet we don't know what they actually believed, what they said. Were they men of faith? Did they live their faith not only in their private life, but also their public life? Did faith influence the laws of our nation? We're going to go through some of the Founding Fathers tonight. In fact, 247 guys. I think we can be done by about 3 in the morning. Does that work for everybody?